Once upon a time, in a small, dusty village in South Korea, there lived a young boy named Jun. He was born into a poor family that struggled every single day just to survive. His father worked in the fields as a farm laborer, earning only a few coins a day, and his mother washed clothes for richer families in the nearby town. Jun didn't have toys, fancy clothes, or even proper shoes. Most of the time, he walked barefoot across rough roads and muddy pathways. Their house was a tiny wooden hut with a broken roof that leaked whenever it rained. At night, when the cold wind entered through the cracks, June wrapped himself in an old blanket full of holes, trying not to shiver. He often felt hungry but tried to hide it so his mother wouldn't worry. Even though life was hard, June was not a sad or lazy boy. He was quiet, curious, and always thinking. He loved watching people, understanding how things worked, and imagining a better future. Sometimes he would sit by the road and watch horses pull wooden carts, or he would stare at bicycles passing by, wondering how the wheels spun so smoothly. He didn't understand mechanics, but he felt a strange excitement in his chest whenever he saw something moving with speed and power. Other children in the village often laughed at him because his clothes were old and torn. He didn't talk much, and he didn't have money to buy snacks or toys like them. But deep inside, June had something they didn't see, a burning dream that he couldn't fully explain yet. He didn't know exactly what he wanted to build or create, but he felt that one day, something big would come from his hands. He often whispered to himself, "Maybe one day, I won't be poor anymore. Maybe one day, I can build something great." At night, after helping his parents with work, he would sit outside and look at the stars. He imagined that each bright star was a dream, waiting for someone brave enough to reach it. He didn't know how, but he promised himself that he would not stay poor forever. Childhood struggles. As he grew older, the challenges around him became heavier. His father's health started getting worse because of the hard farm labor. There were days when his father couldn't stand properly due to back pain. June tried to help by carrying water, gathering wood, and doing any small job available in the village. Sometimes he would help villagers fix broken tools or carry goods to the market, earning just a few coins. Even with little money, he felt proud because he was supporting his family in some way. He never had the chance to go to school regularly. Sometimes he attended a few days, but then he had to stop to work again. Still, he loved learning. Whenever he saw books or newspapers, he tried to read them slowly, asking older people to help him understand the difficult words. He believed that every new word he learned made his mind stronger. One day, when he was around 12, he saw something that changed his life forever. A man from the city visited the village, driving an old, noisy car. It was the first time June had seen a car so close. The engine made loud sounds, the wheels moved quickly, and the machine looked like a powerful creature made of metal. The other villagers were only surprised, but June was completely fascinated. He walked around the car again and again, staring at every detail. He couldn't stop thinking, "Who made this? How does it move? How is this even possible?" The spark of a dream. That night, he couldn't sleep. The image of the car kept playing in his head. He imagined sitting behind the wheel, driving it across cities, feeling the wind hit his face. He imagined owning a big workshop full of machines, tools, and people working together to build vehicles. He didn't know when or how, but from that day on, he knew what he wanted. He wanted to be a creator of machines, something greater than anyone in his village had ever imagined. However, reality was still harsh. His family was still poor, and there was no way to get proper education in mechanics or business. Still, he decided that he would not give up. He thought, I may not have money, but I have hands, I have a mind, and I have a dream. And one day, this dream will grow. Leaving the village, when June became a teenager, he made a difficult decision. He told his parents that he wanted to leave the village and find work in the city. His mother cried and said, "The city is dangerous. You are too young." But his father, despite being weak, looked at him with tired eyes full of hope and said, "If you believe you can do something great, then go. Don't let poverty hold you forever." And so, with a small bag and a heart full of hope and fear, June walked away from his village to chase a dream that only he could see clearly. The dream of building something powerful, something that moved, something that could carry people forward, just like that car he saw many years ago. June walked for hours, carrying only a small cloth bag with a few clothes and a piece of bread his mother had packed for him. The road to the city was long and full of challenges. He slept near trees at night and asked strangers for directions during the day. His feet hurt, but his heart kept whispering, "Keep going. Your dream is ahead." After several days, he finally reached the city. It was huge, noisy, and full of people rushing everywhere. Horses pulled carts, bicycles sped past, and some cars honked loudly as they drove by. June felt both excited and scared. He had never seen such a busy place before. He had no family there, no money, and no place to sleep. That first night, he sat behind a small shop and slept on cold stone ground, hugging his small bag tightly. The sounds of the city were loud and frightening, but still, he reminded himself why he came. He whispered, "One day, I will build something that will make people remember my name." First job and first failures. The next morning, he began walking around the market area, asking for any kind of work. Most people ignored him or said, "You're too young." Eventually, a man who owned a rice shop allowed June to carry heavy bags of rice for a few coins a day. It was hard work, and his back ached every night, but he never complained. Every time he saw a car pass by, he watched it with shining eyes, as if studying every sound and movement. One day, after working for several months, he saw a small repair shop near the market. The shop fixed bicycles and sometimes repaired broken parts of small machines. June stood outside the shop for a long time, watching how the mechanic used his tools and how the gears worked together. He was fascinated once again. It reminded him of the moment he first saw a car in his village. The mechanic noticed the boy staring every day and finally asked, "Why do you stand there?" June replied shyly, "I like watching machines. I want to learn how they work." The mechanic laughed and said, "Machines are not for poor boys without education. Go back to carrying rice." June didn't argue, but he continued standing there whenever he had free time. Finally, one day the mechanic needed someone to clean tools and sweep the floor. He pointed to June and said, "Hey boy, if you want to stand here for free, at least make yourself useful." June quickly agreed. It wasn't a real job, but for him, it was a golden opportunity. Learning from observation. While sweeping, He paid close attention to everything the mechanic did. He carefully watched how screws were tightened, how chains were fixed, and how wheels were aligned. He didn't understand everything, but little by little, he began to guess how things worked. Sometimes, after closing hours, he touched the tools and tried to remember how the mechanic used them. At first, he made mistakes and even dropped tools by accident, making the mechanic angry. "You're useless," the man would shout. But June refused to stop learning. Even when he was insulted, he stayed calm. He believed that every angry word was just noise preventing him from hearing the voice of his dream. First small success. One day, while the mechanic was away, a man brought in a broken bicycle with a loose chain. The customer was in a hurry and didn't want to wait. June hesitated but remembered how the mechanic had fixed similar problems many times. With shaky hands, he tried to repair it. After a few attempts, the chain was properly fixed. The bicycle worked. The customer smiled and gave him a small coin. When the mechanic returned and found out what happened, he was surprised that June had done it correctly. From that day, he allowed June to assist him with small tasks. It wasn't much, but it was a start. June's first steps into the world of machines had begun. Dreaming bigger. As time passed, June became more skilled with bicycles and small machines. However, he didn't forget the image of the car he saw as a child. He knew bicycles were just the beginning. He wanted to work with engines, power, and motion. He saved every small coin he earned, sometimes skipping meals just to save more money. At night, he would sit alone and imagine building something big, maybe even a company that made vehicles. It sounded impossible, but he believed that even the biggest trees start as tiny seeds. One evening, while working late, the mechanic said, "You're a hard worker. Why do you try so much?" June looked at him with quiet determination and said, "Because I don't want to stay poor forever. I want to build something that moves people forward." The mechanic laughed softly, not in a cruel way this time, but still with disbelief. "Dreams are nice," he said, "but machines need money, education, and big connections. Do you have any of those?" June simply replied, "No, but I have effort, and I can learn." The mechanic didn't say more, but for the first time, he looked at June with a small sense of respect. A new opportunity. After a few years, June heard about a larger workshop in another part of the city that repaired engines. He knew this was his chance to get closer to building bigger machines. Saying goodbye to his first workplace, he thanked the mechanic who had reluctantly helped him grow. He didn't know what awaited him next, but he carried something powerful with him. New skills, strong determination, and a dream that was slowly becoming clearer. He walked toward the new workshop with the same feeling he had the day he left the village. Scared but hopeful, unsure but determined. He still had nothing but a heart full of dreams and hands ready to work. But this time, something was different. He no longer walked as a boy with no knowledge. He walked as a young man who had fixed his first machine with his own hands. And that small success was a spark that would soon turn into a burning fire of ambition. When June arrived at the larger workshop, he immediately felt the difference. The place was bigger, louder, and filled with machines he had never seen before. There were several men working with tools, engines laying open, and the smell of oil and grease was strong. To him, It was like stepping into a new world, a world closer to his dream. He approached the owner and asked for a job. The man looked at him and said, "Do you have experience?" June replied, "I have repaired bicycles and small machines. I can learn." The owner wasn't interested. "We need trained workers. This place is not for beginners." Without saying more, he turned away. June stood there for a moment, feeling rejected, but he did not walk away. Instead, he waited outside the workshop every day, helping workers carry tools, cleaning the floor outside, and even bringing water when they were tired. At first, they ignored him. Some even laughed and said, "Why are you here every day? Go away, boy." But he continued to show up, silently proving his persistence. After a few weeks of this routine, the owner finally said, "Fine, if you want to stay. You start by cleaning and running small errands. No pay unless you prove useful." June agreed immediately. To him, this was not humiliation, it was an opportunity. The door had opened just a little, and he was ready to push it wider with hard work. Life in the workshop. Working there was much harder than he expected. Engines were complicated, heavy, and dangerous if handled wrong. The workers were tough and had little patience. If June made a mistake, they shouted at him. One time, he picked up the wrong wrench, and a worker yelled, "You are too slow. You'll never understand this." Sometimes he felt stupid and useless. He wondered if he belonged there at all. But then he remembered the car he saw in his childhood, and how much it moved his heart. That memory was enough to keep him strong. Bit by bit, he observed how engines were opened, how each part fit together, how fuel and air worked to create motion. At night, when the workshop was empty, he sometimes stayed behind to look closely at old engines, touching the metal slowly, trying to understand their secrets. One worker, an older man named Mr. Han, noticed June's quiet dedication. Unlike the others, he didn't shout much. One evening, he approached June and asked, "Why do you stay late and study broken engines?" June simply said, "I want to understand how they live." Mr. Han smiled slightly and replied, "Engines don't live, but they do breathe. If you listen carefully, they will tell you what they need." From that moment, Mr. Han decided to guide him little by little. He taught June how engines were cleaned, how fuel systems worked, and how to diagnose common problems. It wasn't formal teaching, but June learned quickly because he paid attention to every word and every movement. The first big failure. One day, the workshop received a damaged small truck engine. The job was urgent, and everyone was busy. Mr. Han allowed June to assist in opening the engine. June was extremely nervous but tried his best. However, during the repair, he accidentally dropped a small bolt into a part of the engine. It took hours for the workers to find and remove it. The owner was furious. He shouted, "You cost us time and money. Get out of my workshop." Everyone looked at June with disappointment and anger. Humiliation burned inside him. He felt like he had destroyed all the progress he had made. June left the workshop with tears in his eyes. He walked to a quiet alley and sat down, feeling ashamed. A voice in his head whispered, "Maybe they were right. Maybe I am just a poor boy trying to touch something too big for me." He thought about going back to his village and giving up on his dream. For hours, he sat silently, feeling broken. A moment of reflection. But once the sadness began to fade, something stronger rose inside him. A quiet but firm belief that one mistake should not end his dream. He remembered his father's tired but hopeful eyes when he gave him permission to leave the village. He remembered how hard he had worked, how much he had learned, and how far he had come. If I go back now, he thought, I lose everything I have fought for. That night, he slept outside again like he did on his first day in the city. But this time, instead of crying, he made a promise to himself. I will not run away from failure. I will learn from it and return stronger. Redemption. The next morning, he went back to the workshop, stood outside, and waited. The workers were surprised to see him. The owner came out and shouted, Didn't I tell you to leave? June bowed deeply and said, I made a mistake. I'm sorry, but I want to learn. I will work harder. I will not disappoint you again. The owner looked at him for a long moment. Finally, he sighed and said, Fine, but this is your last chance. From that day, June worked harder than ever. He arrived earlier than everyone and left later. He listened more, spoke less, and focused deeply. Over time, he became skilled in diagnosing engine issues and assisting with complex repairs. He had failed, but he had also risen again, and now he was stronger, more focused, and more determined than ever before. Months passed, and June slowly became one of the most reliable assistants in the workshop. Customers started noticing how careful and respectful he was. Sometimes they even waited for him instead of other workers, saying, That quiet young man takes his time and does things properly. This gave June a small but meaningful sense of pride. He still didn't see himself as a master, but he no longer felt like a boy lost in a world to beg for him. Mr. Han, the older mechanic who had once guided him, now trusted June with more responsibility. One evening, after a long day of work, Mr. Han said, You've improved a lot. You don't just repair machines, you understand them. That's different. Those words stayed in June's heart for a long time. They were like fuel that pushed him forward. First lead job. One day, a customer came in with a badly damaged small car engine. Most workers were busy, and Mr. Han was out. The owner hesitated, unsure of who to assign the job to. June stepped forward quietly and said, I can try. The owner looked doubtful, but time was running out, so he agreed. June worked carefully, remembering everything he had learned. It was his first time leading a repair without supervision. He cleaned every part, checked each section carefully, and took no shortcuts. After several hours of focused work, he started the engine. At first, it hesitated, then roared back to life. The owner was surprised and a little impressed. Not bad, he muttered. The customer was happy and paid the full price. This time, the owner handed June a real share of the payment, not just a small coin, but a proper wage. June held the money in his hands and felt something powerful inside him, confidence. Saving was purpose. From that day on, June began saving seriously. He didn't spend money on new clothes or treats like other young workers. Instead, he kept almost every coin, telling himself, This is not just money. This is fuel for my dream. He had a new goal now, not just to learn, but to eventually build something of his own. He began reading whatever he could find about engines, machinery, and even small business management. He asked older workers questions and absorbed their advice. Slowly, he gained not only technical knowledge but also an understanding of how workshops operated, how customers were treated, and how trust was built. The idea of independence. After a few more years of experience, June started to think seriously about independence. He noticed that many customers preferred honest mechanics who explained problems clearly and treated their vehicles with care. He thought, if I can repair machines with heart and treat people with respect, maybe they will trust me. But opening a workshop required tools, space, and money, things he didn't fully have yet. Still, he didn't give up. He looked for a very small space for rent in a quieter area of the city. After negotiating, he found a tiny corner shop that was old and broken but cheap. It had enough space for a single engine and a few tools. For others, it was nothing. For June, it was the beginning of a dream. With the little money he had saved, he bought a few basic tools and borrowed some old ones from kind acquaintances. The shop had a rusty door, cracked walls, and no signboard. But when June first stepped into it, he closed his eyes and imagined the future. He saw customers lining up. He saw engines being built. He saw his name becoming known. Maybe not now, maybe not soon, but one day. First days of his workshop. The first few weeks were extremely difficult. There were no customers, and he barely had enough money for food. Some people passed by and laughed, saying, "Who would trust a boy in a shop this small?" But June stayed patient. He cleaned the shop every morning, polished his tools, and always kept the workshop open, even when no one came. One day, an old man pushed a broken bicycle toward the shop. He asked softly, "Can you fix this?" June nodded with a respectful smile and repaired it quickly and carefully. The old man was pleased with his work and said, "You are skilled and kind. I will tell others about you." True to his word, he recommended June to several people in the neighborhood. First, real trust. Soon, a man with a small motorbike came for repairs. Then another customer brought a broken generator. Day by day, people started noticing how honest and hardworking June was. He never cheated, never charged unfair prices, and always returned machines better than before. Slowly, trust grew. His shop, once quiet and empty, began to receive more customers. He didn't earn much, but he earned something more valuable: reputation. And reputation, he believed, was the foundation of something bigger, a new vision. One evening, after completing his repairs, he sat on the floor of his workshop and looked around. It was still small and simple, but he no longer saw it as just a shop. He saw it as the first chapter of a much larger story, one that he was determined to write with his own hands. In his heart, he held a quiet but powerful belief: if I can grow this place, if I can earn enough trust, I can build something greater than a repair shop. Maybe, one day, I can build my own vehicles. Maybe, one day, I can create something that moves people not just from place to place, but from hopelessness to dreams. As time went on, June's tiny workshop slowly became known around the neighborhood as a place where machines were treated with care and respect. He didn't have a fancy sign or shiny equipment, but customers trusted him because he listened to their problems, explained repairs honestly, and always tried to give his best work. Soon, he couldn't handle all the work alone. Some days, there were more machines waiting than he had time to fix. He began working late into the night, his hands covered in oil and his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Despite the long hours, he felt a new kind of happiness. A happiness born from building something with his own hands. Hiring the first helper. One afternoon, a teenage boy named Minho came to the shop and said, "I've seen how you work. Can I learn from you? I'm willing to clean, carry tools, and do anything to help." June looked at him and remembered his younger self standing outside the first workshop, begging to be given a chance. He nodded and said, "You can stay, but only if you are serious and ready to work hard." Minho agreed eagerly. Was a helper, even a beginner, June's life became slightly easier. He taught Minho slowly and carefully, just like Mr. Han had once taught him. But unlike the harsh environment at his previous workplace, June never shouted at him. Instead, he guided him with patience. Soon, the workshop had a new rhythm. June would handle complex repairs while Minho cleaned parts, fetched tools, and watched closely to learn more each day. The team grows. In time, another young man joined them, then another. The workshop now had a small team, and the work increased even more. June always paid them fairly, even when it meant he had little left for himself. He believed that loyalty and respect were more important than money in the beginning. With more helping hands, June decided it was time to expand. He rented a slightly bigger space nearby. One was enough room for larger machines like small trucks and motor vehicles. The move was risky, and the rent was higher. But he believed that if he kept working honestly, more customers would come. And they did, facing new challenges. However, success also brought new problems. Repairs became more complicated, and sometimes even June didn't know how to fix certain engines. There were days when customers returned complaining about incomplete repairs, and June had to apologize and work again without extra charges. There were nights when he sat in the workshop long after everyone had gone home, staring at a machine that wouldn't work, feeling lost. One evening, his team saw him sitting in silence, looking exhausted. One of them asked, "Are you okay?" June looked up and said, "I'm afraid. We have grown, but I don't want to fail my customers or you." Minho, now more confident and skilled, replied, "You taught us everything we know. If you believe in machines, believe in yourself too. You didn't come this far by luck." These words reminded June that leadership was not about being perfect, it was about never giving up, even when things were unclear. The first dream of building something new. With more experience, June began to notice patterns in the machines he repaired. He started thinking not just about fixing them, but about improving them. What if engines could be more efficient? He thought. What if vehicles were built to last longer, even for people who could not afford luxury? He remembered his childhood, the poor families who had no access to transportation, the long walks through muddy paths, the feeling of being left behind in life. He thought, if I could one day build vehicles that ordinary people can afford, I could change many lives, just like I am changing my own. That night, after closing the workshop, he stayed behind and sketched rough designs on old papers, ideas for machines that were simple, strong, and affordable. They were not perfect. In fact, many of his early sketches were technically weak, but they were the first seeds of something much bigger, turning work into purpose. The next day, he gathered his small team and shared his dream. One day, he said quietly but confidently. I don't want us to only fix other people's machines. I want us to build our own. A machine that carries people forward, people like us. Some of them were surprised. One laughed nervously and said, build our own machine. Isn't that something only rich companies can do? June didn't get angry. He simply smiled and said, every big company started somewhere, usually from someone who believed they could do more than just survive. His team didn't fully understand, but they trusted him. They had seen his journey from a struggling worker to a respected mechanic and leader, and trust was enough for now. The road ahead. As his workshop continued to grow, June's dream became stronger. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew there would be failures, obstacles, and days when everything might seem impossible again. But he also knew something else. He had already survived failure before and risen from it. Now, he was no longer just a boy chasing a dream. He was a man building a path toward it step by step. Years passed, and June's workshop had become more than just a place for repairs. It was now a center of trust in the community. He and his small team had gained respect for their honesty and dedication. Customers came from different parts of the city, and sometimes even from nearby towns. But deep inside, June knew that simply repairing machines was not the end of his journey. He remembered the moment he first saw a car as a young boy in the village, the shock, the admiration, the dream that was born that day. He knew that dream had grown over time, fed by experience, struggle, and determination. Now, it was time to take a step forward, a big one, the bold step, building something of their own. One evening, after the team had finished their work, June called them together. He placed a few rough drawings on the table, sketches of a simple vehicle engine. The team looked confused. Minho asked, are these designs for a machine we are repairing? June shook his head slowly and said, no, they are designs for something we will build ourselves. The room went silent. One of the newer workers looked doubtful and said, but building an engine from scratch is not the same as fixing one. It's risky. What if we fail? Another added, we don't have enough money or advanced knowledge. June listened patiently and then replied, I know it's hard. I know we might fail. But if we don't try, we will only be repairmen forever. I want us to be creators, even if we must fight for it. His eyes were full of determination. Slowly, one by one, his team nodded. They didn't fully understand the path ahead, but they trusted their leader. The first prototype. The next few months were some of the toughest in their lives. They worked all day repairing machines for customers, then stayed late at night working on their own design. They bought old broken engine parts with a little money they could spare and tried assembling them into a new form. Sometimes the pieces didn't fit. Sometimes the engine wouldn't start. Sometimes it exploded in smoke and noise, forcing them to cough and laugh at their own mistakes. But beneath the frustration, there was excitement, a deep feeling that they were building something meaningful. Every failure taught them something new. Every little improvement made them believe more strongly in the dream. After many attempts, they finally built a rough, basic engine that could run for a short time. When it started for the first time, even with a shaky noise, the team looked at each other with disbelief and joy. They had created something new, not perfect, but alive. That night, they didn't celebrate with expensive meals. Instead, They sat on the workshop floor, eating simple rice and smiling with tired but happy faces. The world reacts. Not everyone believes in dreams. As news spread that June's workshop was trying to build engines instead of just repairing them, many people reacted negatively. Some customers said, "He has lost his mind." Some neighbors laughed. "A poor boy making engines like big companies? Impossible." Even other workshops mocked them, saying they should stick to repairs before they embarrass themselves. Hearing these words hurt the team. One of them even said, "Maybe we should stop. What if they're right?" But June looked at them calmly and said, "People laugh at things they don't understand. They see our present, not our future. Let's focus on what we are building, not what they are saying." Financial crisis, the darkest days. As they continued developing their prototype, their financial situation worsened. They had spent most of their savings on parts and materials. Some customers began to leave because repairs were delayed due to the amount of time spent on the engine project. Bills stacked up. Rent for the workshop was due. There were days when they ate only one meal. One team member even considered leaving to find a safer job. The pressure was enormous. One night, after everyone else had gone, June stayed alone in the workshop. He sat in the dark, looking at the unfinished engine. Doubt entered his heart again. He whispered to himself, "Am I leading everyone to failure? Did I dream too big? Maybe I should stop before everything collapses." His eyes grew heavy with sadness. He placed his hand on the cold middle of the prototype and felt fear stronger than ever. A voice from the past. But as he sat in silence, he remembered his journey. The boy walking barefoot in the village. The moment he first saw a car sleeping outside was nothing but hope. Being kicked out of a workshop after failing. Returning stronger. Opening a tiny repair shop was nothing but belief. Earning trust was honesty and effort. He realized something powerful. Every time I thought I couldn't go further, I went further. With renewed strength, he whispered, "I did not come all this way to stop here." Back to the fight. The next morning, he gathered his team and said, "We are tired, hungry, and close to failure. But look at what we've already done. We made something that moves. If we stop now, all our struggles will mean nothing. If we continue, even if we fail, we will at least know we tried with everything we had." His words reignited their spirit. They returned to work, this time even more determined. With renewed determination, June and his team continued refining their engine. They tested different combinations, improved fuel efficiency, reduced vibration, and made small changes again and again. Each night, they left the workshop with tired bodies but stronger spirits. Finally, after endless failures and countless adjustments, something incredible happened. Their improved prototype started running smoothly. The sound was stable, powerful, and reliable. It was not just a noisy engine anymore, it was a future beginning to take shape. As the engine hummed, the team looked at one another with disbelief and excitement. Minho's eyes filled with tears as he whispered, "We did it. We really did it." June placed a hand on the engine and smiled with quiet pride. They had taken a dream born in poverty and turned it into a piece of living, breathing success, attracting attention. As word spread about the improved prototype, some people who had once mocked them began to take them seriously. A local businessman, curious about their achievement, visited the workshop. He saw their dedication, their working prototype, and their detailed plans for future designs. Impressed, he said, I believe this could grow into something big. If you are willing to expand, I want to invest. This was a turning point. With the investor's help, June expanded his workshop into a small factory. They hired more workers, bought better equipment, and began developing improved versions of engines and basic vehicles. From workshop to factory, the birth of a brand. In time, their factory began producing small vehicles that were affordable, strong, and useful for everyday people, farmers, delivery workers, and families who could never afford luxury cars. People loved them. Sales grew steadily. Their name began to spread. June decided to give the company a name that symbolized modernity and moving forward, a name representing the future. And from that spirit, a brand was born inspired by Hyundai's real journey. The once poor boy from a silent village was now the founder of a company that helped people move not only across land, but also toward hope. Giving back. Even after achieving success, June never forgot his past. He built schools for children in poor areas, supported technical training programs for young mechanics like he once was, and helped struggling workers become skilled professionals. Whenever he saw a young boy staring at a machine with curiosity, he would smile and say, "Dream big. Work hard. Your hands can change your life." Final reflection, a message to the listener. Years later, standing in front of his factory, listening to the steady sound of engines being built, June reflected on his journey. He remembered hunger, humiliation, cold nights, failures, and tears. But he also remembered persistence, hope, belief, and the moment when the engine first came alive. He whispered to himself, "Engines are like dreams, they don't work unless you build them step by step." And so, his life became a message. You may begin with nothing. People may laugh at you. You may fail many times. But if you believe, learn, rise again after every fall, and keep building even when everything seems hopeless. One day, what once was just a dream will become something real, something powerful enough to move not only you, but also the lives of many others. So, dear listener, remember this. No dream is too big. No beginning is too small. Your hard work, your patience, and your belief can turn your life into a journey of success. Just like the poor boy who once watched a car with wonder and ended up building vehicles that moved the world. If you enjoyed this story, keep listening to more. Every story helps you learn English in a fun and easy way. Practice every day, just like June worked every day on his dream. Your English will grow step by step, and one day, you will speak with confidence. Don't stop. Your journey has just begun.